Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. I'm really excited today because I'm bringing you 3 of my family's favorite soup recipes. So we're going to be making some soup together. And also, not just that, but my daughter Rachel over at this lovely little farmhouse, her video today is also going to be 3 of her family's favorite soups. So between our 2 videos, you can get 6 new soup recipes. The 3 soups that I'm going to make today are all going to be using different meats and different proteins. So I'm going to be using ground beef in one, a beef soup shank in one, and smoked sausage in the other. And there's going to be some beans in there too. So you will find all of these recipes in the description box. And I'm also going to link Rachel's video for her 3 soups. I'm going to link that video in the description box for you too, so that you can find that easily. I'm going to go ahead and get started. The first soup that I'm going to make today is a Cajun 15 bean soup. So I'm going to show you how to do that right now. So this is what I'm using, this 15 bean soup mix. And but I wanted to tell you, like, you don't have to use this. I saw that Azure has a 13 bean soup mix, which is probably would be fantastic to use. And also there's probably a few other brands that have different amount of beans, mixes pre-made like this. But you can even just make your own. If you have different dried beans that you like, that your family likes, you can just put those together and make a soup with that. It doesn't have to be this, and it doesn't have to be 15 beans. So I'm all about, making a recipe your own and using what you have. That's the way I cook, and so that's the way I make my videos too. So I want you to know that they're always adaptable. Like if you don't have something that I use it, or if I'm using something that you don't necessarily like, you can use what you do like. Also, this mix comes with a seasoning pack, which is going straight into the garbage. For me, I'll be seasoning these beans myself. This is probably full of artificial ingredients and things like that that I don't really want to be cooking with. So I'm going to be using smoked sausage that we made in these beans, and that smoke is going to be part of what gives it a really good flavor. Also, another thing that I would do if I had one is I would use a ham bone instead of the smoked sausage and let it have the ham flavor. But the smoked sausage is going to be really good. If you're interested, I have a video where I show you how we make the sausage, and I will try to leave a link for you and maybe a card so that you can find that video pretty easily. But you can use whatever type of sausage you have. Now I'm going to cut my sausage up into smaller pieces. I like for it to be bite-sized when I'm making soup. And so I'm going to cut it a little smaller maybe than what some people would do, but that's just how I like to do for my sausage. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get all this sausage cut up, and then I'll be able to get started from there. Okay, to get started here, I'm going to put some coconut oil into my pot. This is the pot that I'm going to cook my beans in. But before I start cooking those, I'm going to go ahead and brown my sausage. So as soon as that coconut oil gets melted, I will put the sausage in. Okay, I'm going to add my chopped onions. So I chopped about a half of an onion, which came out to be right at a cup. I'm going to go ahead and put those in there and let those be sauteing in here with my sausage. Just going to let this go until the onions get a little soft and clear, and then it'll be ready to go in with the beans. I'm going to go ahead and add some garlic. I'm going to go ahead and add some water to this. And now I'm going to add these pre-soaked beans. If I can do this without spilling them everywhere. Okay, now I'm going to turn this on to medium high and let it get to cooking, and then we'll add a few more ingredients. Okay, so I've been cooking these beans on a fairly high heat, and I've cooked a lot of that water that I put in here out of them. I am going to go ahead and I'm going to add some beef broth in here and some seasoning. I'm going to add some of this broth that I canned. You could use, this is beef, you could use beef broth, you could use vegetable broth, whatever you have, chicken broth, it doesn't really matter. It's just going to add some more flavor and some more health benefits, and it's going to make this bean soup delicious. Now I'm going to add some seasonings. I'm going to add some garlic powder, some onion powder, and some Cajun seasoning. I'm going to put a lid on this and leave it on low and let it simmer. Okay, so my beans have softened up some, and the last thing I'm going to add in here is my tomatoes with the green chilies. Now, this is going to give it, you know, a little spiciness. So if you don't want spice, you can just use regular diced tomatoes. But if you do want to give your beans a little bit more spicy, go ahead and add the ones with the chilies, and it's going to be really good. Now, just going to let it simmer with these tomatoes in there, and then it'll be ready shortly. Be sure and add some salt and pepper to taste. And I'm going to add a little extra sprinkling of Cajun seasoning. This is the one that I'm using. I already added it earlier with the other spices, but I'm going to give it a little bit more, and this is ready to go. You can always add more broth if you want yours to be soupier or more liquidy. My family likes theirs a little thicker, so this is how it's going to be. I hope you give this soup recipe a try. If you do, let me know in the comments what you think about it. The next soup that I'm going to make is a beef and vegetable soup, and I am going to use these soup shanks to get that soup started. So we raise our own beef, and I always make sure that I get plenty of packs of these soup shanks, or what I call soup meat, because they are so wonderful. They make such a good pot of soup, and so I always want to make sure I have plenty of these in the freezer when I get new meat. I'm starting by browning these soup shanks in a little coconut oil in my skillet, just to get them seared nicely and brown on the outside. I'm not cooking the inside of them, and after I get this done, I'll be putting them into the crock pot. So I'm going to put them in the crock pot, and I'm going to add, I think I add about 10 cups of water, but you'll need to add the amount of water based on the size of your crock pot and, you know, how much broth you think you need. Because what we're going to do is use these soup shanks to make a very delicious and nice thick beef broth to be the base of the soup. Being that we're cooking this in the crock pot, we're not really going to have any of the liquid cook out, if any. We might end up with a little extra from condensation. I'm also going to add a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar to get this broth started. Okay, so I put these beef shanks in my crock pot yesterday. I actually put them in kind of later in the afternoon. So I ended up leaving them in there all night last night, and I just checked on them and they are looking really good. So I want to show you what they look like and then where we're going to go from here on this soup. But I just want to say that if you, and you'll see this in just a minute, beef shanks are a lesser expensive cut of meat. And I know when I first got some in the first calf that we had done, I didn't know what to do with them. I was not really even a soup maker at that point in time. And my husband, he didn't like soup. Well, he loves soup now, just fast forward several years. But anyway, I think these beef shanks are a pretty amazing cut of meat, actually, now that I've used them for so many years. And I think that after this video, if you've never used them before, they may be a new cut that you might want to use, because you'll see just how amazing they are, just sticking them in the crock pot overnight. So let me go ahead and show you what they look like, and we'll move on to the next step. Okay, so not only are these things gonna provide us with meat for our soup, but look at this amazing broth. So they have the right kind of bones for making broth. So you see all of that, the insides of those bones have cooked out into that broth. And so we have a nice healthy beef broth here that we're going to use to make this soup. And I'm going to take this meat out right now and let it cool so that I can break it apart. Although you can see I'm not going to have to do very much breaking it apart, because it is super tender now after cooking all night in this crock pot. And you can do it quicker on the stove, but you won't get quite as nice of a broth. This is just pretty amazing, and it smells wonderful too. So I'm gonna let this meat, I've got it out here now. Let me show you what it looks like. So there it is. It's all just falling apart off the bone, but it's too hot right now for me to fool with. So I'm gonna leave it in this bowl and let it cool while I go ahead and do some additional steps on the soup. And then we'll come back to the meat. So I have a few things that I've already cut up here. I have some carrots that I've already got cut up, and I'm going to go ahead and put those in my broth now. And then I also have some onions and some celery. And so those are fixing to go in too. So I'm going to put these things in. And I'm going to turn the crock pot back on high. It's been on low overnight, but I'm going to go ahead and turn it back on high and let it cook these things. And I'm also going to go ahead and add some of my seasonings. So I'm going to do that now. And after this cooks a little while, I'm going to come back and start adding the rest of my ingredients. So that was onion powder, garlic powder, and some Cajun seasoning that I just put in there. And then my carrots, celery, and onions. So, like I said, I'm turning this back on high. I'm going to let this cook for a little while, and then I'll come back and we'll finish the meat and we'll add the other things. But isn't that amazing? What an amazing broth you can get from a cheap cut of meat that nobody really wants to use. Okay, so my meat is cooled off now. I'm going to go ahead and pull this apart, and you'll be able to see how tender it is. And I'm going to put it into the crock pot, which is still has the onions and the carrots and things in it there. Look, it just falls apart now. So easy to do. It's a little hard when it's really hot, so that's why I let it cool off when I pull it out of there. But once you cook this shank meat, it's so tender and it's really tasty too. So this is not going to be, really heavy on meat. I could have used more of my beef shanks and had more meat in it, but it's going to have a ton of vegetables in it. And another thing you can always do if you wanted to add more meat, you could have used your beef shanks to make your broth and put this meat in there, and then you could add some other type of meat like ground beef, or sometimes if I have leftover of anything in my refrigerator like leftover steaks or roast or something like that, I'll throw that in my soup too for some extra meat. But even for my meat-loving husband, this will be enough that he'll realize there is meat in the soup. He's not having just a vegetable soup with no meat, and so he'll be happy. And it's got a really nice beef flavor with the meat in there, and then the broth from the meat. So there we go. Just a few little leftovers in here. And there is our meat in the soup. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and peel a potato and cut it up. And then I'm going to get all my other vegetables out and add them into the soup. If you don't have a peeler like this, you need one. This is the absolute easiest thing to use, and I love it. I bought one years ago, and now it's the only thing that I use. It's just so quick and easy. I'm only going to do one potato right now because I'm not sure how many will fit in my crock pot with all the vegetables. But if after I add the others, if I have room, I'm going to definitely add another potato in there. So let's go ahead and add these in. All right, and then let me get the rest of the vegetables to put in there. So I don't typically have all of these canned vegetables, but I had a friend that gave me several cases of them, and we don't normally eat those on a regular basis, but they're perfect to use for soup. So I like to use these canned vegetables for soup. If I didn't have the cans, I would either use what we've grown that we have from our garden or frozen. If I had to purchase, I would purchase frozen probably, but you can use whatever vegetables you have. And if you have just fresh, you could definitely use fresh. So this is just tomatoes, diced tomatoes are going in there. Some green beans. I did drain all of the liquid off of this because I don't need that liquid. I have my beef broth in there, and that is giving me plenty, and peas. So this is what I expected, was for it to be really, really full when I got all those vegetables in there. I don't think I'm going to be able to add anything else. Now I'm going to let this cook for a little while, and then I'm going to taste it. Sometimes I like to add a little tomato sauce. Like I said, I'll taste it in a little while. I'm going to leave it. I'm going to turn it to low, and I'm going to leave it for a couple of hours cooking, and then I'll come back and taste it and see what I think. And I might add some more seasoning or some more tomato sauce. But this is going to be an amazingly delicious soup for supper tonight. And like I said, you can definitely customize it to your taste. You might like other spices that I didn't put in mine, or other vegetables, different vegetables. That's fine. You just need to make it the way that you want it to be. All right, our soup's been simmering in this crock pot on low for quite some time, and it looks really good. I'm going to add some salt and pepper, and then I'm going to give it a taste and see if I want to add anything else to it. I'm going to let that sit for a little while, and then I'm going to taste it, and I might add some tomato juice to it. It is good like it is, but I think I'm going to add some tomato sauce. Our family does tend to like it better when it is a little bit more tomatoey. I'm going to start with a cup of tomato sauce. I'm going to add this in here, and then see what I think about that. So I am always tasting my soups when I cook them and making adjustments as I go along. and I would encourage you to do the same thing. So I ended up adding a whole can of tomato sauce to this soup, and it turned out really good. You can find the recipe that I used in the description box below, and I hope that you'll give this soup a try. It's really good, and be sure to make it your own by using the vegetables and the spices that your family loves, so that they will have a soup that they really find cozy and delicious. So now it's time to go ahead and move on to the third and last soup in this video, and my husband says that I saved the best one for last. So I hope that you'll think that too. So be sure and stick around for the third soup, and we're going to go ahead and go into that. Okay, so this next soup that I'm going to make is a bacon cheeseburger soup, and it is so delicious. Like I said before, my husband said this was his favorite out of the 3 soups that I made. And it is really good. It tastes like a cheeseburger in a bowl with some cozy broth with it. And so it's really delicious. It really hits the spot, and we enjoyed the soup a lot. So I'm starting here by getting my things prepped for the soup, and the first thing I'm doing is grating a block of cheddar cheese. I think this was an 8-ounce block of cheddar cheese. I will leave all of the exact measurements in the description box in case I tell you the wrong thing in the video. But here we go with getting everything ready for the soup. So now that I have the cheese grated, I'm going to go ahead and start getting this block of cream cheese ready. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to cut it into little squares so that when I add it to my soup, it will be able to mix in a little bit better. I find that if you don't put it in big chunks, it works a lot better when you're trying to melt it. And so that's what we're going to be doing. This is going to be the base. The creaminess for the soup is going to be the cream cheese and the cheddar cheese. The next step that I'm going to do is to chop an onion. So you just need like 1 small onion. I think it probably came out to be about a cup of chopped onions. So if you have like one of those seasoning blends that's already chopped that has a few other things in it, like some peppers or celery or things like that, I think that would work great in this too. I think that it would be just fine. So if you have that, if that's something you like to use, you could substitute that for the chopped onion, and I think you would come out just fine. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get the rest of the ingredients together that we're going to need for the soup so that I can show you what all you're going to be using here. So we've got our chopped up onions, our grated cheese, and that block of cream cheese. And we have a few other things we're going to add, which are some mustard and some ketchup, a can of tomatoes with green chilies, like the Rotel brand, and I usually use the mild because I don't want my soup to be too hot, but if you're a person that likes it hotter, you can do that. Then we have a pound of ground beef, a pack of bacon, some green onions, some salt and pepper. There's a quart of beef broth that I'll be using in there. And I know I usually add a little bit of Cajun seasoning, which I probably didn't show you here. Now we're ready to start cooking the meats. So I have my ground meat in my big pot here, and I am working on breaking it up. You want to get your ground meat broke up into pretty small little pieces. Since this is soup and you're going to be eating it with a spoon, you don't want to have really big, huge chunks in there. At least I don't want to when I'm making my soup. I want it to be broken up pretty small, and I probably got a little over ambitious here when I decided that I could cook the meat and fry the bacon at the same time. I know that I decided about halfway through that it might not have been a good idea to do that and try to film at the same time, but anyway, I did. So we're going to want to get our bacon cooked and our ground meat cooked. So I went ahead and sped this up for you so that you didn't have to watch the whole long process. And this is about how fast I felt like I was working when I was cooking with both of these things going at the same time. So here's my ground meat, and it is browned now. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and add the onions in so that they can be cooking with the ground meat while I finish frying all the rest of this bacon. Now, I like my bacon to be crispy, especially for this soup. So
That's how I got it. Got it crispy, nice and crispy, and I'll be cutting it up in a minute. And then here is what the ground meat and onions look like after they have all cooked. The onions are kind of clear now and ready. So I'm adding a quart of beef broth. This is my broth that I make myself from my beef bones when we get meat, but use whatever broth you have. And if you have any chunks left in there, go ahead and try to get those broken up, because I think you will enjoy the soup better that way. So now I'm adding the tomatoes with the green chilies, and the brand that I have is just the Aldi brand, but any of them will work. And like I said, either mild or the hotter one, whatever one you like. Now I'm adding 3 tablespoons of mustard. And like I said, this soup really does contain the ingredients that you find in a cheeseburger, so you really do get the cheeseburger flavor. And here's some ketchup. We have 4 tablespoons of ketchup that we're going to add in here. And then we're going to try to get that all stirred in really well. Okay, now it's time to start adding all that creaminess in there. And like I said, I tried to space these little blocks of cream cheese out in the soup and not have one big hunk. I just find that it's a lot easier to get it to mix in and to melt. It doesn't take as long as it does if you have a big hunk in there, and sometimes I end up with part of it that I think is melted and it's not. So it works a lot better this way. And you can see here that I haven't even stirred it yet, but that cream cheese is already starting to melt into that broth. And now it's time to get the bacon ready. So we are going to add this bacon to the soup, but before we do that, we need to chop it up into little pieces. Now I like to get mine pretty small because I want it to mix all throughout the soup, and I like to have the pieces small enough that you can pretty much get like at least one little piece in every bite, so that you get that bacon cheeseburger flavor in every bite of soup. So I like to chop it small. And the other thing is, we're not going to put all the bacon into the soup. I'm going to reserve out probably 1/4 to 1/3 of the bacon to use as a garnish on top of my soup. Now, I am cooking for adults, so if you have little kids that you maybe don't add the bacon on the top, you could go ahead and put more of it into your soup. But my people like to have some of the crispy bacon on top, so that's the way I do that. And here you can see about the amount that I kept out. So we'll go ahead and mix that bacon in, and then we're going to add our cheddar cheese. And I'm telling you, this soup is so delicious. You have to make it. I can't wait to make it again. In fact, I'll probably do that soon because everybody really loves the soup. I'm going to have to start actually doubling the recipe when I make it, because everybody gets some, but if we had more, people would eat more of it. So I probably will start doubling this recipe for my family of 5 adults. So there's that Cajun seasoning that I told you I was pretty sure I put in there, and it is just a sprinkle. I like to sprinkle it. I don't usually measure my Cajun seasoning, but you could start with a teaspoon. That's probably a pretty good amount. And then here I'm going to go ahead and add my salt and pepper, which are also probably, I think that was 1/2 teaspoon of each one of those. Which, if you don't use the Cajun seasoning, you might need a little more salt and pepper. And here's something that I forgot to tell you that was going to be in there, and that is heavy cream. So the heavy cream, the cheddar cheese, and the cream cheese are what are going to give us that amazing creamy feel to this cheeseburger soup. And I added a cup of the cream into my soup, and you can see that it really made it nice and creamy. You could always add more if you wanted to. That's just what I added in. Okay, so here it is, and this is the green onions. They need to be chopped to go on top as a garnish, and then the bacon. And if you have people in your family that love pickles, chopped pickles would be really good on here too. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel, and let me know in the comments if you're going to make one of these soups.
Thank you for being here today. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, please be sure and leave a comment and let me know which soup you're planning on making or which one looks the best to you. And also give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I would love to have you here joining me. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you again.